Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on July 28, 2023, and is current through the Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode Under the Cloak of War, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in the Alex Kurtzman era of Star Trek, with the 12th television show and the 14th movie currently in production, and merchandise continuing to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is Mike Pasquale. Mike, welcome to WeeklyTrek.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, I ask my guests this question every week. I want to know something's got you excited about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
Alex, I'll tell you what I'm most excited about in Star Trek this week, and it was hard to make a decision on this. But
Sure.
I have been a Trekkie since I was, a prenatal. And when I was a kid in the 70s, I played with the Mego action figures.
Yep.
And I love them, and I still collect them. And this week, a couple that new ones went up for pre-order. The Andorian Ambassador and a Telosian, and they look fantastic, and I cannot wait to get my hands on them. In my basement, I have displays of all my Mego figures, as well as some of the XO6 figures, and I just love those. I love those things. So Mego can do no wrong in my eyes.
I see the Colonel Spock from the motion picture over your shoulder, which is very cool. Actually, it looks like you've got both the Mego and the XO6.
I do, and they're actually pretty good together. They look like. So I'm very excited to order those and add those to my collection.
So does getting the Mego Telosian count as a replacement or an addition to the Alien Keeper?
I'm pretty sure that's an addition to.
Okay.
Yeah. They're doing a little bit of I've got a Gorn set up downstairs, and he's actually in the right uniform, and it's green, so they're more accurate these days.
Yeah, I love that. I have a couple of the Migos. I have Core and Saru and Q. Those are the three that I have because I thought they were all pretty funky.
Those Klingons, the two new Klingons that they did, Kor and Kang, are some of the best likenesses I ever had.
Yeah.
And my Saru I got signed. I was at Trek Long Island, and I got it signed by Doug Jones, and I was over the moon.
Oh, so if you were at Trek Long Island, you must have had a good time talking to Dr. Mego.
I didn't actually talk to Dr. Mego, but I did spend some time by the Mego table, and I bought them. Probably spent too much money. Some classic figures, and it's bad. I can't remember the guy I spoke to, but he was just fantastic, and it was a great time there. But I was so happy to see the Mego stuff. That's one of the reasons I went.
Yeah, did you at any point did you own the Mission to Gamma 4 set?
I don't remember owning that when I was a kid, and that's super rare now, and that's probably more than I'm willing to pay for. But I have two of the Enterprise play sets. I have one at home, and I have one in my office at work. So everybody at work thinks I'm nuts, but that's okay.
That's cool. Yeah, I think the first time I ever saw in person the Mission to Gamma 4 set was at Trek Long Island. That was fun.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a cool one.
Well, let me tell you what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week, which is I'm going to STLV in a few days, and I think you might be as well.
I am. I will
Very
be there.
nice. When are you leaving?
I leave Wednesday at noon.
Oh, very cool.
And I wish we were transporting, so I'm a little nervous about the flights, but we'll see.
Yeah, especially this time of year as the storms are rolling outside of my window at the moment. But I am excited for STLV this year. I'm thrilled to be back at the Rio. I'll have more to say about that at the end of the episode, but I always have such a great time at this convention, and it's here again, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, and I'm looking forward to having a great 4 days. Talking Star Trek, not talking Star Trek with the actors, but we'll roll with the punches. Solidarity, but it's gonna be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm recording. This is Friday night, and I'm heading out on Tuesday, and I could not be more excited at this point. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, this is my first time. I've been to STLV 3 times previously in 2009, I think. So right
Last
after the
year
experience
at the Hilton.
closed.
Yeah.
Last year at the Hilton, that's right. And then in 16 and 17. And I haven't been back since. So I'm really looking forward to this. And I'm looking forward to the Fansets party, the Fansets and Trek Geeks party, which is supposed to be extraordinary. So
Yes. I think they're doing that at Millennium Fandom this year, the like sci-fi
that's right. That's
bar
right.
in Vegas. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'm thrilled. I couldn't be more excited. And this is like a fun amuse-bouche for me getting into the STLV spirit. All right, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, the crossover episode between Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Star Trek Lower Decks has been a huge hit, with a very strong positive fan reaction. And while coverage of the episode in the entertainment press has been necessarily limited because of the current strikes taking place in Hollywood, an Entertainment Weekly article with interviews conducted before the strike starts to shed light on how this fantastic episode came together. We were guests in their house, Jack Quaid, who plays Brad Boimler, said about the experience of working with the Strange New Worlds cast. We were trying to simultaneously be respectful, but also really make sure we did carry forth our tone in the proper way. I think the person that made sure it was all balanced was Jonathan Frakes. My motto became, I'm going to see how far I can push this and how unrealistic and cartoony I can be, and I want Jonathan to bring me down after that. I'd rather go too far and then have him adjust me and go back than it not really quite feeling like he's enough of Boimler from the cartoon. And Tawny Newsom talked about improvising some of the hot Spock dialogue from the episode. My head is always appreciating hot people just at any time, Newsom said. I know I can improvise about Jack and will be cool no matter what, but you're talking about someone's physical appearance. You want to make sure everyone feels okay. So I pulled Ethan aside and I was like, hey, after the hotline, do you mind if I just lift off some things? It might feel like I'm lightly objectifying you. Are you cool with that? And he was like, absolutely, and thank you for asking. And what about the Strange New Worlds cast stepping foot into animation for the final scene of the episode? Voiceover acting's really hard for me, Ethan Peck, who plays Spock, admitted. I don't do much of it, and it's a very different art medium. I was really excited to try it out. I actually asked Jack for advice on it, but it's just something you need to do a lot, I think, to understand how it works and where to put emphasis and how to communicate emotion through using only your voice. Mike, what was your reaction to those old scientists?
I thought it was a fantastic episode. There were a few things that struck me on it that I haven't seen anybody actually bring up in a review or in a comment online. One, I thought how they seamlessly moved Jack or Boimler through from animation into live action was fantastic. And then the first line he says, "My God, you guys look so realistic." I mean, it was very meta, but I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then when he's wakes up and he sees Pike and he's talking to Pike and he's babbling and then he just turns to Mbenga and says hello and then turns back. I thought that was just hilarious, but also just a really, I think, fantastic piece of acting. I wasn't expecting Boimler to be the sort of the centerpiece of it, but Jack Quaid did an extraordinary job.
Yeah, he was so good. And like, I really appreciated reading him sort of stating what his philosophy for the episode was, that he was trying as much as possible to sort of capture that like cartoony feel for the character and was relying on Jonathan Frakes, the director, to like help him thread the needle between the character feels like Boimler without being so cartoony as to feel unrealistic in the sort of live action frame. And like, I think together they just did an absolutely perfect job of that. I mean, like the little touches of the sort of really cartoony Boimlerisms, like the screams there were just enough of them for it to be Boimler without there being too many, right? You got a little bit of the like, cartoony Boimler walk, and that was really, it was just like a really nice touch. But then there were also those moments where, the sort of pathos of the character sort of shined through a little bit, and like it became a very grounded character all of a sudden in the moments that was needed, but not in a way that then felt inauthentic to the sort of cartooniness of those other scenes. It was just so well done.
Well, and I think the same can be said of Tawny Newsom, who I thought really nailed Mariner in live action, and those side quips and things like that she really got. And I thought the hot Spock thing was hilarious. And I hope one day they'll find a way to get Terry Farrell on Lower Decks, because I would love to see Dax and Mariner talk about how much they love Spock.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like my big takeaway from this is I want more live action Star Trek from Jack Quaid and from Tawny Newsom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, give me a Lower Decks crossover every season. I mean, not really, because it was excellent and they captured lightning in a bottle. And could they do that again? Who knows? But like, hey, if they're inclined to try, I'm inclined to watch, because Those Old Scientists was so good.
Yeah, it was great, and just to say again, I think the meta stuff was fun too. I love the fact that, I guess I'm focusing too much on the objectification pieces, but I thought when Ransom Jerry O'Connell, whose wife is Rebecca Romaine, I thought that was hilarious too. So they just hit everything right, and it could have been a disaster, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's just so well done. I mean, and like those moments of choosing, like that line that you referenced, right, when Boimler first arrives and he's like, oh, you all look so realistic. Just a really well chosen moment to not like mug at the camera, but just like wink at the camera of like, yeah, we know what we're doing, right? We know the absurdity of this, and like we get it, and we're here to sort of revel in the fun of it with the rest of you. So yeah, it's just I do not have enough good things to say about Those Old Scientists. It really is like the episode that for me I have really sort of vibed most with, in the last couple of years of new Star Trek. I've watched it a bunch since it came out.
Yeah. No, this is one of the most rewatchable episodes ever. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and in their appearance on last week's The Ready Room, Lower Decks and Those Old Scientist stars Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome talked a little about Star Trek Lower Decks' 4th season, and Tawny talked a little bit about how she ended up in the writer's room for Starfleet Academy. For Lower Decks, Jack Quaid dropped a tantalizing hint about the opening of season 4, when the first 2 episodes will drop together on September 7th, and cinematic screenings have been announced for Star Trek Day. Season 4 is going to be very, very fun, Quaid said. Our first episode is like a big love letter to the fans. I can't exactly explain why, but it's really exciting. And Tawny Newsome talked about how she ended up getting hired for the Starfleet Academy writers' room, which is currently on hold due to the writers' strike, but is expected to resume production once the strike is resolved. Well, first of all credit and thanks goes to my friend and boss, Alex Kurtzman, Newsome said. Because of this crossover, he called me on the phone and he saw a rough cut and he said, I can tell you're a writer, send me everything you've written. Because he watched all of our ad-libs and stuff, and he was like, just send me everything you've written. He really invited me in a way that said, I see you because I saw you do this complex thing, which was a mixture of writing and on camera and stuff. And he went, and I bet there's more in there. And I was so grateful because half the time in this business, you're just trying to get people to see you. So he really invited me in a way that very few executives have in my life. So for that, I am eternally grateful. Mike, how are you feeling about Lower Decks season 4?
I'm really looking forward to it. I thought the trailer was great. I'm looking forward to seeing how they fight the macrocosms on the Voyager Museum, which I thought was an interesting piece. It's just Lower Decks always makes me laugh. And I guess they're going to be doing some sort of, the first 2 episodes are going to be shown theatrically.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to seeing them on the big screen. So, these are times where you need a lot of laughs. I think that's why These Old Scientists was great. And that's why Lower Decks coming up is kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, it sounds like they've got something really fun coming. I mean, yeah, as you say, right? First 2 episodes dropping on the same day, which is September 7th. And then September 8th, they've announced they're doing these cinematic screenings, at least in the United States. We don't know about internationally, but at least in the US. Presumably of those first 2 episodes, they've said it's of Lower Deck season 4, and presumably it's going to be at least those first 2 episodes. And now Jack saying they did something really fun that's a love letter to the fans, but, whatever it is, they've actually done a really nice job of keeping it under wraps. I mean, watching the season 4 trailer, it's not like I can point to something and go, aha, I think that's what, the season 4 premieres about. Obviously, we know all of that stuff is in season 4, but that could be from episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6, and not from 1 and 2. And so yeah, it's very tantalizing. And Those Old Scientists is definitely a good setup for getting excited about the return of Lower Decks and the sort of Lower Decks vibe. And on this sort of Starfleet Academy piece, I would say for me personally, one of the things that got me excited about the concept for it, after sort of initially kind of hearing, all right, it's Starfleet Academy and it's set in the 32nd century, and I that does not immediately just sort of generate a well of excitement within me. Then hearing that Tawny Newsome was in the writer's room did make me go, oh, right, because if some of the energy that she brings to Those Old Scientists can translate over into the writing on Starfleet Academy, I mean, we're really in for a treat.
No, I think that's true. I remember when I was I guess I was in high school, maybe a little younger than that. This is in the '80s, and they're bantering about doing the Starfleet Academy. Harv Bennett is like a Star Trek Six or stuff like that. I've been ambivalent, to be honest, about Star Trek Academy, anything with Star Trek Starfleet Academy since then. But when I heard it was the 32nd century, I thought that was going to be an interesting spin on it. And I agree with you, if Tawny can bring some of her energy to that writing room and to those scripts, it could be something really quite special. I mean, I'm going to watch it, no question about it. But I think it's a challenging concept, and I'm glad to see that Alex Kurtzman has the foresight and just the leadership to be able to say, okay, let's take advantage of the talent we have in front of us to make things better. So I say lots of things about Kurtzman. I've never met the guy. I wouldn't want his job. It's a tough job.
Sure.
But that story just makes me think, okay, there's somebody there who has a good heart and a good head and is willing to give people chances. And I think that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think it is wonderful to see that there is this sort of culture of developing sort of homegrown talent within the current iteration of the Star Trek franchise. That's really wonderful to see. In addition to bringing in all these sort of great new outside voices, right? Like Nami Melamad, one of her first things was doing the short treks, and now she's doing Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and she did an MCU movie last year, and like her career as a Hollywood composer is really like taken off, and that's, homegrown talent. Tawny Newsom's wonderful. That's another homegrown talent. Yeah, the Starfleet Academy concept, right? Like feels like there's a reason why it was a concept for like 30 years before someone finally decided to move forward with it, because it is a tough one to get right. I mean, and it's a tough one to figure out what the right audience to pitch it at is. It probably is the smart choice to pitch it at sort of, like a young adult audience, since it's a young adult show rather than a young adult show for an adult audience, because like, of course I'm going to watch it, but it's like, am I naturally inclined to say that top of my list of things I want to watch in Star Trek is teenagers screw up all the time? Probably not, right? But at the same time, there's massive potential for it to be very, very good. And Tawny's on the writing staff, and it's too early to tell anything else. And so, yeah, I mean, as with all Star Trek, this one gets my full-throated support. And, if it ultimately ends up not being for me, a musical episode later this week will not be for some people, or a crossover with Lower Decks and the adult animated comedy will not be for some people. That's perfectly fine and dandy.
Well, and even though it's going to be, geared towards a certain audience, Star Trek Prodigy was the same way. And that was just a beautiful, beautiful surprise. Yeah. And really, it's for everybody. Treated very poorly, but really is for everybody. So I'm looking forward to being pleasantly surprised like I was with Prodigy.
And like, I said I didn't think Lower Decks was going to be for me, and now I love it. I can't get enough of it. So, what do I know? I'm just an idiot.
Join the club. Me too.
Well, I love Star Trek fans with big dreams, and Mike Nevitt is a Star Trek fan with a big dream. Profiled this week in the Washington Post, the 59-year-old Brit who currently resides in Denmark is beginning to work on a model of the USS Enterprise complete with a full interior. The scale of that model, well, it's 1:25, which means that this USS Enterprise NCC 1701 from the original series, if and when it is completed, will be about 40 feet long and 11 feet high. Mike, who posts his updates on the model over on a YouTube channel and some Star Trek Starship modeling communities on Facebook, has been concentrating on building out the interior of the ship, the bridge, the corridors, crew quarters, and the science labs of a Constitution-class starship. But Mike knows he's kind of crazy, and in quotes for him, the best ways. For me, he said, what would be crazy would be just to go do a regular job where I'm driving to work, doing a 9 to 5 and driving back home again. I couldn't do that. Mike has planned out a lot of what he hopes to build, including the Enterprise's more than 1,000 toilets. Yes, he is very serious about his craft. Mike is raising money for the project through Patreon, and as of yet is not sure where the final model will live once it's completed. That does feel like an important question, though. Mike, have you ever had the inclination to build a 40-foot-long model of the USS Enterprise?
I have never had that inclination, but I admire Mike for what he's doing. And, I was reading the Washington Post article about this, and you talked about the toilets. So I was wondering, is that canonical? And he was also saying you wanted to make sure every room had a sauna.
Yeah,
I also
right.
wondered if that was canonical. But more seriously, he had a logic behind all that, because he's talking about, you're going to be in space for all these years, and you look out the window, if you've got a window, and it's just blackness. So you want to make the space as comfortable as possible. The sauna, which is great, and that's supportive of the mental health of the individual, of the folks on the crew. So I like the backstory he was thinking about in putting that stuff together, and it just makes me think how he's emblematic of Star Trek fans, because you just take an idea, you get committed about it, and you take it to the nth degree. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm a big fan, I think you are too, of Ticonderoga's set.
A much shorter drive than than for me.
Yes, absolutely. Only 4 hours from here. But this sort of reminds me of that kind of commitment, and you only put that kind of commitment into something you love and something that's meaningful. So I have great admiration for what he's doing. Could never do it myself, but I have great admiration for it.
Yeah, me too. Before the Washington Post article, I said on a previous episode, I made my first model. No, it's not 40 feet long. It's about like 9 inches long, but I'm just as proud of it as Mike is of his about to be 40-foot long creation. And so
Start small.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm interested in making more of them. So I was like, I should go out and just sort of like get in these Facebook groups to see what people, just follow the conversation. And, I've been learning stuff about like the specific colors people have used for some of the models that they're building that I'm also interested in building, and, some technique type stuff. And there were these posts. This guy posted these pictures of this like sort of corridor set he was building for the Enterprise, and it was huge. And I was like, that is huge. Are you building the whole thing? Because that's enormous. And then someone sent me the Washington Post article, and I was like, oh yeah, he actually is making the whole thing. And I think that's like, just like you, I think it's completely wonderful. I mean, what a terrific way to apply yourself and your passion and your time and your creative energy towards doing something like this. I mean, I'm always a firm believer in like, if you are passionate about something, go do it and like have fun doing it, because like, why not, right? Life's too short to do anything else other than, what you enjoy and what makes you feel good. And I just hope someday I get the opportunity to like visit it wherever it is and check it out, because I want to count and make sure that there are 1,000 toilets.
1,000 toilets, yes. I'm with you there.
So yeah, good on you, Mike. We wish you all the success and hope that we get to see it one day.
Absolutely.
Well, and lastly this week, with STLV coming up later this week, that means that Pin Collectibles company Fansets is rolling out their latest and greatest in product announcements that will be available for purchase at the show and then on the company's website in the weeks following. 2 Admiral Picard badges are coming, the Starfleet Admiral pin that he wore in seasons 2 and 3 of Star Trek Picard, and the Confederation pin seen in the painting of General Picard from the dystopian alternate timeline seen by Picard thanks to Q in Picard's 2nd season. A new version of the regular Picard pin is coming, both the silver versions from seasons 1 to 3 and the gold version from the Star Trek Picard season 3 finale. The revised version of the Starfleet Delta pin from the early 25th century finally features the groove along the delta that's been missing from the Fansets Picard badges to date. And it's really nice they have redone the release to add that feature. I'm very excited about it. Among other featured releases, the company will be doing a black version of the Lower Decks badge used by Section 31 in Crisis Point 2 Paradoxus, and will be releasing a set of pinback Starfleet rank pips, their first foray into doing the pips too. And actually, since Novos went out of business, the first place you can get rank pips from that are properly licensed. They've also got new additions to their character and starship pin lines, so there is a lot for fans to enjoy. Mike, when I invited you on the episode and gave you the list of stories, you said you were a big Fansets fan. So tell me, of everything I've just listed, what are you getting?
Well, it's a lot of it. I've been looking forward to the Picard Admiral pin, and I talked to Lou and John at Trek Long Island, and it was just such a wonderful conversation, because I didn't realize that they were basically a 2-man operation.
Sure.
And their attention to detail was extraordinary. I learned that the TNG Delta, if you look at their Delta, it has the sides are black.
Yep.
And that's because on the TV show, they painted them black because otherwise they were afraid they wouldn't see them.
Yep.
But on Picard, because it's HD, they didn't need to do that. So I never noticed notice those differences. So I appreciate their attention to detail. I'm looking forward to the glitter pins. And one of the glitter pins is Stamets and Culber. And it's just so nice to see those two guys together. And I don't know that that's the sort of thing that we could, you can't get it. I probably can't get that signed. It wouldn't make sense, but I would love to, get a picture with those guys with that pin. And of course, there's the Garrick pin and Spock and a few others. I'm going to spend too much money at that table, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, their sort of Star Trek badge collection now is like, it's really impressive in terms of the sort of like range of the releases and the depth of it and things that like have never been released before. And not just saying that from the perspective of like, well, of course nobody's made a Star Trek Picard season 3 series finale badge before because it didn't exist as of a couple of months ago, right? Like they've just done at Las Vegas, one of the other ones I didn't mention in the story up front, they're debuting is the last of the ranks from the like future imperfect com badges, which are the ones with the bars behind the delta, and the bars are gold or black depending upon what your rank is. So 4 gold is captain, and then like 2 gold and 1 black is lieutenant commander. And that's really cool that they've now done all of them. They've done ensign, lieutenant junior grade, lieutenant, right, blah 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 blah. Nobody's ever done that before. Nobody had done a release of the future like I think there was one, like maybe the Experience did a really bad version of it like 20 or 30 years ago, and like that's it. They did a good one of that. They did it. One of the ones they started off with was the All Good Things badge. That's really great. They started to go into some of the alien stuff now too. So like, if you're somebody who likes collecting stuff and like these badges are actually really, really nice. And so adding the Picard season 2 and 3 badges is gonna be really cool, and that Confederation one too is also very cool, right? I mean, you only catch it for a glimpse of a moment in a painting. You don't even see it like in live action, but it's really cool looking, and I think it'll be a really nice thing for people to own, especially if they want to, like if they want to like cosplay that version of the character, then now there's something available for them to get. So yeah, it's really terrific.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I have a bunch of the deltas displayed in my basement, so I can never have too many.
All right, well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
Well, each week, my guest and I give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about any of the shows or the future of the franchise. So, Mike, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
So it's a wish, and it's kind of an offbeat wish.
Okay, I love an offbeat wish.
I've thought about this a lot, and especially after having watched Under the Cloak of War this week, and reflecting back on the siege of AR 558 and nor the battle for the to the strong, the Jake Sisko and Bashir episode. And I'm a huge fan, not only of Star Trek, obviously, but of MASH. Almost as big a fan of MASH as I am of Star Trek. So my wish, and I'll explain why in a second, my wish is that, and that's why I say it's offbeat, I would love someone to, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a book, someone who's a better skill set than I do, to sort of delve into both of those series, especially the original series, but across the board, and just sort of pull out the similarities between and have discussions and conversations around how those two series, or the two franchises really are really super similar. Because I think of Colonel Potter in the same way I think of Captain Picard and Captain Kirk and Captain Sisko and Captain Burnham, because there are so many leadership lessons there. It's the show about found family, just like Star Trek is. It's about deep characters like Star Trek is. It's about exploring the human condition about Star Trek is. And like Star Trek, they have some really cool and interesting doctors who are different but still committed, and plenty of jokes about bedside manner.
Sure.
So it'd be interesting to see if the holographic doctor, how he would do on MASH. So that's my crazy offbeat wish. I would love to see some discussion or analysis of how Star Trek and MASH are really so similar. And I think there would be some interesting conversations that would come out of that, just like there are from the episode this week. So that's my offbeat wish.
Okay, so something along the lines of what something you just said. So question for you: if you could take one MASH character and put them into a Star Trek series, which character would you transfer over and which series would you transfer them to? And then likewise, if you could move any character from a Star Trek series into MASH, which would it be?
One of my favorite MASH characters is Major Winchester. He is a trip because he's a fish out of water, but he grows so much as a character in a situation that's just nuts for him. I would move Major Winchester to Deep Space Nine and see how he deals with Quark and Garrick and all the folks who are more different from him than any of the characters.
Sure.
And who would I move? I said it earlier, and so the first thing that would strike me is I would move the holographic Doctor. I think the Doctor would be a trip interacting with Hawkeye and BJ, and I might even go back and see how would he interact with Frank Burns. That would be a trip. So that's a great question, Alex. I'd never thought about that, but that would be that kind of that's going to be a bad pun. That kind of mashup would be really entertaining. Now I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight because I got to start thinking about all that stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. No, I like that a lot. All right, let me tell you what it's not really a wish. It's not really a theory. It's just an opportunity for me to talk a little bit more about STLV, but actually a very specific part of STLV and a specific piece of news that we just learned in the last hour. Trek Movie posted their a preview article for STLV next week, and normally they talk to Gary Berman, who's one of the sort of co-CEOs or whatever their title is of Creation Entertainment, who runs STLV. And the assumption had been, either because I can't remember if this was officially in an interview or if it was that at an earlier convention this year, someone had talked to Adam Malin, the other person who runs STLV, and he had said this, and then it had gotten spread all around the internet that this was going to be the last year at the Rio for STLV, that, for whatever reason, the new owners of the Rio, because Caesars Entertainment, who's owned it for the last 10 years, had sold it to a development company who were going to do a big kind of renovation on the Rio and refurbishment. They didn't seem interested in continuing having the convention there. Well, it's official. Next year, it's staying at the Rio. So Gary Berman said they're at the Rio again for 2024. And there are lots of people to whom that news will be disappointing. But to me, I love it because I love the Rio. It is one of the dumpiest casinos in Las Vegas. I was about to say on the Strip, but it's not on the Strip. It's off the Strip. But it's one of the big ones. It was opened in the late 80s, early 90s, and boy, does it show it. And I have been every year since 2011 was my first year going to STLV, and which I think was the first year at the Rio. So every year they've been at the Rio, I've been there, and it's gotten a little bit worse every year. And I am excited that it's staying at the Rio. And it's well, hold on a second, Alex. You just said it gets a little bit worse every year. Why are you excited that it's staying there? And for a couple of reasons. One, it might be a dump, but it's our dump, right? We go into that hotel, and for 5 days, it is owned by Star Trek fans. It is just Star Trek fans everywhere, right? I always feel bad for people who stumble into the Rio for any other reason than to be at the Star Trek convention while we're there, because it's it is Star Trek City for the few days that we're there. And yes, the food options have gotten less and less. And that was the one thing about last year when it was at Bally's was really nice, was there was so many more food options that were right there or very close to Bally's. Or Rio, it's you've got the stuff in the Rio and that's basically it. And there's precious little of that anymore. But it's our dump. The convention space is perfect for this convention. The giant main theater, theater last year at Bally's was too small. The vendors room setup was too small and sort of oddly laid out for where the photo ops and the autographs took place, and just they just have the best possible space at the Rio for what Star Trek fans want that convention space to be for. And so, yeah, I mean, the renovations apparently are about to begin. I guess they said the reason we were at Bally's last year was because the renovations were taking place. If you were expecting to go to the Rio later this week and find there had been renovations, there have not been renovations. Those don't start now until later this year. But the Rio is an awful place, but it is one that I feel very fondly about. And because I have so many great memories attached to being in that hotel, I'm looking forward to making some even more great memories this week with people who are very important to me. And I don't know why I saw this news about, it was staying at the Rio in 2024. And I was phew, that's where I wanted it to be. I like the Rio. I like the vibe. I like the setup. And some of that will change with the renovations, obviously. But the fact that it's a perfect sort of convention space, the fact that, because it's off strip, we kind of just take over the hotel for a few days. That will always remain true. And so, I'm looking forward to being at the Rio in a couple of days. And I'm looking forward to that not being the last time I will be at the Rio for STLV. Mike, what do you think?
I think I'm with you. I mean, I've been to the Rio, I guess, twice now. And I thought it was a fine hotel. I didn't have an issue with it. I usually rent a car. So I love the fact that it's one of the few places with free parking.
Yeah, right.
So that's important to me. And you're right. The convention space, I mean, what is that space? 5,000 can hold 5,000 people?
Yeah,
That's
it's
extraordinary.
Huge. Yeah.
And I like that it's all on one floor. I was glad when I heard all the feedback from Bally's last year. I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah.
Because that sounded like a lot. So I'm with you. I feel, I mean, maybe I'll feel differently after this year. I don't know. But I think it's a fine location. I think it's a fine hotel. From my perspective, I've stayed in a lot worse, and
there's a lot worse in Vegas.
I'm with you. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And it'll be nice to go next year. If I go next year, it'll be nice to know what to expect, and maybe have a little bit of an upgrade. So
maybe the promised upgrade that never happens.
Right.
Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Section 31, Starfleet Academy, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, or Prodigy that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, or email them to me at weeklytrek@thetricordertransmissions.com, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Mike Pasquale, for joining me today. Mike, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Best way is I have a Twitter account, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, right.
I think I may keep calling it Twitter.
Me too.
Yeah, because I don't know what would you call a tweet otherwise. So yeah. We'll stick with that. And my handle is at Trekkie Mike P. So would be happy to interact.
And you can find this show on Twitter at Weekly Trek, and me at Alexander T. Perry on Twitter, and at Alex T. Perry everywhere else. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.